It's late. You're driving home. Blue and red lights appear in your mirror. You pull over, hand over your license and registration. And then the officer leans in and asks, "Where are you headed tonight?" Most people answer without thinking, and that single moment can unravel everything that follows. Not because they did anything wrong, but because they didn't know what that question actually is. That question is not small talk. It is not courtesy. It is the opening move in an information gathering sequence, and what you say next becomes part of an official encounter that can be used against you. Understanding exactly what's happening in that moment, legally, strategically, and practically, is what this video is about. Let's start with the foundation. The Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution gives every person the right not to incriminate themselves. The Fourth Amendment protects you against unreasonable searches and seizures. These are not loopholes. They are not technicalities. They are the backbone of your legal rights during any interaction with law enforcement, and they apply whether you're guilty of something or completely innocent. Innocent people get tripped up by police questioning every single day, not because officers are always acting in bad faith, but because the system is designed in a way where your words become tools the moment you say them. Now here's the critical thing to understand about where are you headed? It sounds harmless. It sounds like the kind of thing a neighbor would ask. But in the context of a traffic stop or a street encounter, that question is doing real legal work. Officers are trained to build a narrative. If you say you're coming from a bar, that matters. If you say you're heading to a friend's house, but you're 2 miles away from that friend's house in the wrong direction, that matters. If you say you were at work, but there are paint stains on your clothes, and you claim to be an office worker, that matters. Every answer you give is a brick in a wall they are building, and you have no idea what that wall is supposed to look like. So what do you actually say? You say, "I'd prefer not to answer questions." That's it. That is the answer. You are not required to tell a police officer where you are going. You are not required to explain your evening, your route, your plans, or your reason for being somewhere. In the United States, you have the right to remain silent not just after an arrest. You have it during any police encounter. The Supreme Court has affirmed this repeatedly. Silence, in and of itself, cannot be used as evidence of guilt in a criminal proceeding. Now, there is one important exception, and you need to know it clearly. In many states, about 24 of them, there are what are called stop and identify statutes. These laws require you to provide your name, and, in some states, your address, if an officer has reasonable suspicion that you've been involved in criminal activity. That's a different question from, where are you headed? Identifying yourself and narrating your movements are two entirely different things. Know whether your state has a stop and identify law, but understand that even in those states, you are not required to answer questions about your destination, your activities, or your intentions. Let's walk through a real scenario so this doesn't just live in theory. You're pulled over for a broken taillight. The officer walks up, gets your license and registration, and then asks, "Where are you coming from tonight?" This is not part of the traffic stop. The traffic stop is about the taillight. That question goes beyond the scope of the stop, and you have every right not to answer it. You can say, calmly and without hostility, "I'm not going to answer questions, but I'm happy to comply with anything required of me." This does two things. It asserts your rights clearly, and it signals to the officer that you are cooperative, but informed. which matters enormously for how the rest of that encounter goes. Tone and delivery are everything here. The moment you get defensive, aggressive, or start lecturing an officer about the Constitution, you have changed the dynamic of that encounter in a way that rarely benefits you. You are not there to win an argument. You are there to get through the stop safely and legally. The goal is to be firm, calm, and polite. You are not accusing the officer of misconduct. You are simply exercising a right. A lot of people worry that refusing to answer makes them look suspicious. This is one of the most persistent myths around police encounters, and it's worth unpacking directly. Officers are trained to interpret behavior as suspicious. That is literally part of their job. But looking suspicious to an officer is not the same as providing grounds for a search or an arrest. If an officer tries to tell you that your silence gives them reason to detain you further, that is legally problematic, and any attorney worth anything will use it. Silence, standing alone, is not probable cause. Silence is not consent. Silence is a right. Here's another layer people miss. Every question an officer asks during a stop is evaluated alongside what they can already observe. If there's an open container visible on your passenger seat, the conversation about where you're headed becomes instantly more complicated. If your eyes are bloodshot or there's an odor in the vehicle, the officer may already have what they need to escalate the stop. In those situations, your words can only add to the problem. They cannot take anything away. Saying, "I was just at a party," when the officer can already smell alcohol, doesn't help you. It confirms the narrative they're building. This is why the default posture for any police encounter, absent a genuine emergency where you need their help, should be: provide what is legally required, and do not volunteer anything beyond that. What is legally required at a traffic stop? Your driver's license, vehicle registration, and proof of insurance. That's it. That is the full legal scope of what you must hand over. You do not owe the officer an explanation for where you're going. You do not owe them an account of your day. You do not owe them a story. Some people push back on this and say, if you have nothing to hide, why not just answer? This framing sounds reasonable, but it fundamentally misunderstands how legal jeopardy works. You don't have to be hiding something for a statement to be used against you. Memory is imperfect. Details get misremembered. Officers write down what they hear in their own words. What you meant and what gets recorded can diverge in ways you won't discover until you're sitting across from a prosecutor. Innocent people have been charged based on inconsistencies between statements they made during different parts of the same traffic stop. This is documented. It happens. The right to remain silent exists precisely because the founders understood that a person under pressure, talking to someone with authority over them, is in an inherently compromised position. That right was not designed for guilty people to hide behind. It was designed to protect everyone from a system that is, by its nature, adversarial once it becomes focused on you. So one more time, because this is the part that actually has to stick. When an officer asks you, "Where are you headed?" you look at them calmly and you say, "I'd prefer not to answer questions." If they push, you say, "I'm happy to comply with anything legally required, but I'm choosing not to answer questions." And then you stop talking. You do not explain that choice. You do not apologize for it. You do not soften it with a half answer to seem more cooperative. You have said what needs to be said. Knowing your rights is not about distrust. It is not about being anti-law enforcement. It is about understanding the structure of the encounter you are in and making decisions inside that structure that actually protect you. Officers operate within a system with rules, and those rules apply to you too, not just to them. The next time those words come at you through a car window, you'll know exactly what they are and exactly what to do. Stay calm, be polite, say less, and know that the law is on your side when you do.